Hi dear students, welcome to my YouTube channel, and this is my third lecture in continuation of the causes of the downfall of the European empires. And first was the divine or natural causes, second was the United Nations role, and now third is how communist revolution in Russia eroded the foundation and caused the downfall of European empires from the world. Communism no doubt played a pivotal role in the downfall of European empires by providing ideological, material and military support to anti-colonial movements. By empowering anti-colonial struggles and undermining the legitimacy of colonial rules, communism accelerated the process of decolonization and reshaped the global order in the mid-20th century. Communism played a lethal and devastating role in the downfall of European empires, particularly in the mid-20th century. Its influence was direct and indirect, open and secret, shaping anti-colonial movements, undermining the legitimacy of colonial rule, and altering global power dynamics. The Soviet Union, as the first communist state, actively promoted the principle of self-determination for colonized nations. This stance was enshrined in Soviet propaganda and foreign policy, encouraging anti-colonial movements worldwide. The Soviet Union and other communist states such as China after 1949 provided material, financial and military support to anti-colonial movements in Asia, Africa and the Middle East or Arab world. Communist countries often provided training and ideological education or training to leaders of anti-colonial movements, helping them organize and mobilize against colonial powers. The communist Russia exploited the worst socio-economic plight of the oppressed people, not only in Russia but also in the entire world, subjugated by imperialist or capitalist powers. The prevailing economic system could not resolve the problems of the people as a whole, rather increasing poverty everywhere in the world. Like today's world, wealthy people were becoming wealthier at the cost of poor people. Communist ideology tried to imbibe the spirit of proletarian movement and encourage the people to stand to snatch their rights from colonial capitalist power. Communist ideology stirred the deprived and oppressed people in the entire world and gave a new spirit to the nationalists around the world. Consequently, the nationalist movements waged valiant struggle against all imperialists in the world and triumphed. Communist ideology, rooted in the works of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, viewed colonialism as a form of capitalist exploitation. Vladimir Lenin, the president of Russia, in his 1917 famous book Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, argued that European empires used colonies to extract resources, exploit labor, and sustain their capitalist economies. This critique resonated with the colonized people and provided an intellectual framework for opposing colonial rules. The rise of communist revolution and ideology in Russia significantly shaken and eroded the foundation of European powers in multifarious ways. The Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 not only marked a seismic shift in Russia's government but also sent shockwaves throughout Europe and occupied world. The communist revolution threatened the prevalent capitalist system and order not only in the Europe but also in the entire world. The Russian Communist Revolution directly challenged the legitimacy of monarchies and aristocratic rule in Europe. The execution of Tsar Nicholas II and his family signaled the end of hereditary rule in Russia, inspiring revolutionary movements in countries like Germany, Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and Spain. Monarchs and ruling elites feared the spread of communism to their own countries, leading to a rise in conservative and reactionary movements to suppress socialist ideas or ideology. The success of the communist energized communist parties across Europe and led to significant unrest in countries like Germany, Hungary, and Italy. The success of communist revolution advocate workers' right, land redistribution, and industrial control by the proletariat deprived workers and peasants in Europe, started widespread labor strikes and demands for economic reforms and rights. The Soviet Union's intense anti-imperialist rhetoric undermined the legitimacy of European colonial powers. Communist ideology inspired anti-colonial movements in occupied countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, threatening the economic and political foundation of European empires. The Soviet Union openly and secretly provided moral and material support to anti-colonial struggles and movements, challenging European dominance globally. The success of communism in Russia fragmented and divided Europe into factions of supporters and opponents of Bolshevik ideology. This division weakened the collective strength of European empires as internal and external focus shifted to combating communism rather than addressing other shared challenges like economic recovery after World War I. The Russian withdrawal from World War I following the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in 1918 disrupted the balance of alliance in Europe. The ideological hostility between communist Russia and capitalist European nations such as Britain and France prevented traditional forms of cooperation. European powers had to deal with growing domestic communist parties and the eventual geopolitical rivalry between the Soviet Union and Western Europe during the Cold War. After the end of World War II and during the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union competed for influence in the new developing world. The Soviet Union positioned itself as a champion of anti-colonialism, while the United States, despite its anti-colonial rhetoric, often supported European colonial powers to prevent the spread of communism. This competition accelerated the process of decolonization as colonial powers struggled to maintain control in the face of growing resistance. The rise of communist-backed movements forced European powers to reconsider the cost of maintaining their colonies. During the Cold War, the United States and Soviet Union competed for influence in the developing world. In many colonies of the world, communist parties played a leading role in organizing resistance to colonial rule. These parties often framed their struggle as part of a broader global fight against imperialism and capitalism. In India, the Communist Party of India, along with Congress Party and All India Muslim League, actively participated in the independence movement. In Indonesia, the Communist Party of Indonesia was a significant political force in the struggle against Dutch colonial rule. In South Africa, the South African Communist Party allied with African National Congress to fight against apartheid and colonial-style oppression. Communist parties often succeeded in uniting diverse ethnic, religious, and social groups under a common anti-colonial banner, making them a formidable challenge to colonial authorities. The communist pressure continued after World War II and during Cold War and exerted pressure for decolonization of occupied countries. The costly and unpopular wars in Vietnam and Algeria weakened France's resolve to hold on to its colonies. The prolonged wars in Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea-Bissau drained Portugal's resources and contributed to the Carnation Revolution of 1974, which ended its colonial empire. The cost of suppressing communist-backed insurgencies placed a significant strain on European economies and militaries. For example, France's war in Indochina and Algeria and Portugal's war in Africa were financially and politically unsustainable. The rise of communist-backed movement undermined the moral and political legitimacy of European colonial rule. The global spread of communist ideology made it increasingly difficult for European power to justify their colonial empires. By the 1960s and 70s, most European colonies had gained independence, often after prolonged struggle against colonial powers. The support of communist states played a key role in hastening this process or accelerating this process. Cuba, Vietnam, Angola, and Mozambique and other newly independent states, particularly in Africa and Asia, aligned themselves with the Soviet Union or adopted socialist policies. Some post-colonial states, while not fully embracing communism, adopted socialist principles and joined the non-aligned movement to resist domination by both Western and Soviet blocs. Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam received significant support from Soviet Union and China in their struggle against French colonial rule, culminating in the defeat of France at Dien Bien Phu in 1954. In Algeria, the National Liberation Front in Algeria, which fought for independence from France, received support from communist countries. Communist states supported liberation movements in Angola, Mozambique, and other countries of Africa in their war against Portuguese colonial rule. In conclusion, the communist revolution and ideology in Russia destabilized the traditional monarchical, capitalist, and colonial structure that underpinned European powers. This challenge led to both short-term upheavals and long-term transformation in European political, social, and economic systems. European powers were forced to adapt by reforming domestic policies, realigning alliances, and rethinking their imperialistic approach to maintain relevance in a rapidly changing world. Wish you good luck. Take care of yourself and others. See you in next lecture. Goodbye.